This photo on the left was from Argentine newspaper La Nación, and it's written by a Kosovo Albanian separatist, and it says, "Freedom without option." And yet there's no explanation of the photo at the right, an Albanian girl walking through a Serbian Orthodox church which was demolished by explosives from Albanian terrorists. And the words above the door with the exploded cupola beyond her says, "Death to Serbs." Defense and Foreign Affairs Strategic Policy rightly puts that in the proper context and shows in Prizren, while the minaret standing from the Muslim mosques, the only building burned is the Serbian Orthodox Church. La Nación again printed a photo of a civilian train in Yugoslavia that was attacked by a Canadian F-16, and they put it in the context with the following caption that says, "Albania asks for military help from NATO." Exactly why they would use that caption implying that Albania was at some kind of risk from Yugoslavia when it was actually Serb civilians that were being attacked is unclear. Only half a year later does La Nación admit on an inside page that NATO admitted that they adulterated and manipulated the videos. Again, La Nación says quite ambiguously on the photo on the left, 75 refugees are killed in the south of Kosovo, and that NATO and Serbia accuse each other. In reality, the Serbian security forces and Yugoslav army were escorting Albanians out of a zone of conflict when NATO bombed it. And then their excuse, which La Nación printed unquestioningly, was that Yugoslavia used those civilians as human shields. And then some time later, again on an inside page, NATO admits that it killed by error the refugees. But once the first impression is made, the impact is set in people's minds. Clarín, Argentina's largest newspaper, says, quite strangely, dead Albanians beside Serbian tanks. Well, I may not be a soldier, but I know that the vehicle pictured is not a tank, but rather a farming tractor. And La Nación says that the picture on the right is an image from the Holocaust. It's in fact just an Albanian refugee in Macedonia waiting for bread, not Auschwitz. Some of the journalists and news photographers launched their very lucrative careers by stepping on the graves of others, particularly Serbs. One example of this type of behavior is photographer Gilles Perez. And in an interview with him and about him, it says, Gilles Perez surveys a Bosnian city through a window pierced by a bullet. The angle of the camera tilts the horizon slightly so the two towering buildings seem off balance. The photograph conceals more than it shows, and what it does show is not very clear. This could be any city in the world, and the bullet hole could be evidence of any disaster, from a family tragedy to a civil war. That, perhaps, is the point. I remember my father, his amputated arm and his pain, his descriptions of addiction to morphine, of World War II, the German occupation and the concentration camps. I began to think that I had come to Bosnia in part to see, almost to relive visions buried in my childhood memories. Fathers telling horror stories from the war, mental images so horrific, one is actually compelled to see them to deal with them. And to see them, you have to act them out. I call this war therapy, projecting onto current events, past history. Some people have accused the Serbs of having their own propaganda, and in 15 years of studying media war, I've only seen one time that they've attempted to misuse or manipulate a photo. On the left it says Serb civilian victims Bijeljina. They are in fact the family of a Muslim SDA official who were killed by Arkan's tigers. The Bosnian Muslims, Croats, and Kosovo Albanians were assisted by the U.S. government in hiring a public relations agency in Washington, D.C. in order to sway U.S. public opinion. And the director of that public relations firm, Reuter Finn, James Harsh, boasted to a French journalist how they did it. He said, For 18 months, we have worked for the Republic of Croatia, the Republic of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and the Albanian opposition in Kosovo. It's very simple. A card index, computer, and fax machine. We are most proud to have succeeded in moving Jewish opinion to our side. The game was extremely delicate and involved a major danger. Croatian President Franjo Tuđman was too imprudent in his book. A reading could find him guilty of anti-Semitism. It was no better on the Bosnian Muslim side since President Ali Izetbegović in his Islamic declaration grounded himself too firmly in the quest for a Muslim fundamentalist state in Bosnia. Moreover, the past of Croatia and Bosnia were marked by a very real and cruel anti-Semitism. There were all sorts of reasons why Jewish intellectuals and organizations were hostile to the Croats and Bosnian Muslims. Our challenge was to obtain a reversal of this situation, and we succeeded in doing it in a magisterial manner. We outwitted 3 Jewish organizations, the Anti-Defamation League, the American Jewish Committee, and the American Jewish Congress. This really worked. The engagement of the Jewish organizations on the side of the Muslims was a super poker play. Immediate thereafter, we were able to associate the Serbs with the Nazis in public opinion. In a single shot, we were able to offer a simple story, a history of the good guys and the bad guys. The emotional charge was so powerful in the press that no one could go against it without being accused of historical revisionism. Our work does not consist of verifying information. We are professionals. We had a job to do and we did it. And when the time comes to start a debate on all of this, if you wish to prove that the Serbs are in fact poor victims, go ahead. You'll be quite alone. And this is how Ruderfin did it, by convincing major Jewish organizations and Jewish members of the American government to take out full-page ads in New York Times and other major American media saying stop the death camps and associating the images and the exaggerated and fabricated reports with the Nazi death camps and the Holocaust. Late Tom Lantos, perhaps one of the best congressmen that money can buy, said, "I very much hope that those horrendous pictures which are reminiscent of the concentration camps that the Nazis had during World War II, minus the gas chambers, will stir public opinion both in Europe and the United States. Mr. Bush Sr. and his administration has to be dragged kicking and screaming into taking some action. The civilized world stood by during the early 40s because it claimed, not quite honestly, that it didn't know what is going on. Well, we know now what is going on. It is on our television screen every night." Again, another supporter of all the separatists in the Balkans, Senator Joseph Lieberman. "I thought the tapes were sickening and infuriating because we have seen these emaciated bodies before. We have seen the terror in their eyes. We have seen the beatings. We have seen them in pictures of the Second World War. The only way the Serbs will stop the aggression is to force them to look down a barrel of a gun." I started my investigation by going to interview the 3 warring communities, diaspora, in a major American city. And here is a meeting I had at a Bosnian Muslim mosque. On the right side is a liberal American Jewish rabbi greeting Imam Senad, who was the leader of this mosque. And notice the body language. The Jewish rabbi steps down off the step, leans forward, smiling, and clasps the imam's hand with both hands, while the imam crosses his body in defensive and deceptive body language and looks away from him. The FBI was investigating the arms smuggling and money laundering that was going on in this mosque, funneling mujahideen to fight on the Muslim side, but they were ordered off the investigation. These are the Department of Justice filings from Ruderfin, which show that they represent a foreign government or governments, and it is a blueprint for how they influence public opinion. It blames Serbia for genocide and aggression and encourages the false belief, victimhood of the other sides, and it lists a veritable who's who in media and government of who they faxed and called and met with in order to influence public opinion and U.S. policy. And here are photos from a Kosovo Albanian separatist website showing 3 American congressmen, Ben Gilman, the late Tom Lantos, and soon-to-be Vice President Joseph Biden, who had promised them independence and indeed did help them attain that. And the role of Political Action Committee, or PAC money, cannot be underestimated. Here's one example from 1991-92 from Senator Robert Dole from National Albanian PAC Committee. And again, the list goes on of American politicians who have gotten Albanian narco and terrorist money into their pockets to support their separatist policies in the Balkans. And here's an example of some of the resolutions introduced and passed in the U.S. House of Congress, literally rewriting history, and in this case, clearly by the Kosovo-Albanian separatists themselves. And this effectively becomes the official record of the U.S. government. And by repeating these lies 1,000 times or more, they indeed became the truth. So where does media warfare fit in to the bigger picture? Well, grand strategy is the art of national management. The overarching strategy of national interests is reflected in the pursuit of foreign policy on a regional and global scale. The division of this is strategic policy, the specific details and methodology of operations in pursuit of grand strategy. Includes both strategic considerations and influence of domestic politics. As Miles Copland said, foreign policy is domestic politics carried out abroad. And psychological strategy, the strategy and tactics used to influence behavior of target home non-participatory groups. One technique includes media warfare. Again, Samuel Butler sums up as Mark Twain, next the statesman will invent cheap lies, putting the blame on the nation that is attacked, and every man will be glad of those conscience-soothing falsities, and will diligently study them, and refuse to examine any refutations of them. And thus, by, he will convince himself that the war is just, and will thank God for the better sleep he enjoys after this process of grotesque self-deception. The free press likes to claim that it is open to self-correction. But again, the great grand strategist Gregory Copley noted quite accurately, journalists have a natural tendency to report that to which they have easy access, believe most readily that which has been laid out for them, with which they feel comfortable. Traditionally, when one journalist, or only a small number, works harder, takes more risks, strives more to understand the broader picture, and reports a view contrary to that of his editorial cousins, he is not hailed for his achievement. He is castigated for breaking ranks with the accepted line, the accepted truth. A journalist who admits, in the light of later discovered truths, that his work may not have been all that it should, fears most and first the wrath of his editor. The editor himself rejects correction, unless the laws of libel force such an apology or correction. And in war, there is no libel. Better to sustain a lie than to lose circulation.